Ready to go. Welcome to the June 10th, 2024 meeting of the Sandusky City Commission. We'll have an invocation offered by Commissioner Vargo, followed by the pledge.
God our Father, as we gather for this meeting this evening, give us guidance and wisdom to make the proper decisions. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Myers, will you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Kuntz?
Here.
Mr. Crable?
Here.
Ms. Vargo?
Here.
Mr. Waddington?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
Mr. Murray? Mr. Bajali?
Here. I will ask for a motion to excuse Commissioner Murray from this
So
meeting.
moved.
Second. Been a motion and a second. Without objection, that motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, Mr. Murray is excused. Commissioners, you have before the minutes of our meeting of May the 28th, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move that we accept the minutes of the May 28th meeting as presented.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved and those minutes are approved. We have a presentation this evening on our financial overview that will be conducted by Mike Sitsina of Sitsina and Associates, and I see Mr. Sitsina in the audience. If you'd graciously step to the podium, we'll anxiously hear your words. Right there.
Here. Well, thank you for the opportunity to information. A little detailed perhaps for a presentation of this matter, but in the sense of full disclosure, Michelle and I agreed that everything that we work on, everything that we provide the Finance Committee, was fair game for this presentation. So again, there's a lot of detail, and I will try to hit it from about a 20,000-foot look, but not ignore any specifics, especially any questions that we started doing these sort of presentations for our clients, which include most of the subdivisions in Erie County, by the way, as well as many throughout northern Ohio, in order to give the finance officer a good, comprehensive sense of what any of these cities, counties, schools, what their debt positions are and what things to be concerned about at the beginning of the year so that the rest of the year goes smoothly. And we start with the summary of what all the outstanding debt issues are. And, Sandusky's kind of right in the middle of the road there with the number of issues that are outstanding. We've been helping the city with this kind of information for nearly 30 years now, so we're very familiar with all of these issues, no matter how old they are, or naturally how new they are. And there's some other new ones coming. And so what we did this year is a little something different, was below the line there, if you will, in the middle of the chart, we showed some of the issues that are planned, that are coming, okay? So do we have a complete 360-degree view of everything that's kind of on the table right now. And the ones that are on the come are the notes that will include the Columbus Ave improvements that are on the way. The landings project potential, which is a little farther down the road, as well as the rec center that is under discussion perhaps for an issue maybe as soon as next year. So those are all the on-the-come things. The others are in place and things that we deal with on a regular basis. Michelle budgets for. We match up the revenue sources to repay those and keep the budget balanced. What we try to do with the total annual debt service requirements is break them down into all the detail. And what's always interesting about this graphic is the ones that are coming due to final maturity, and you can see the first 5 issues first 4 issues are all coming off the books in the next few years, which can do one of two things: either take pressure off the budget to fund those particular debt issues, or provide opportunities to leverage those same general fund dollars, or wherever the dollars come from, for other future projects. It gives a nice visual that we're seeing things drop off, we see what the future obligations are, and we know what our totals are. Even more so, the next slide is the actual principal amount of the debt that's falling off. Similar story, but it's only the principal, not the principal and interest. We good? Good. So Sandusky is very unique among our clients and among most of your neighbors here in Northern Ohio, with the basket of revenues that you have to work with to operate the city and, to this point, to repay these debt issues. The agreements with Cedar Point, the bed tax, the income tax from issue 8, just a whole bunch of different things that not every community has at their avail. So the city also does a nice job of, once those revenues were identified and approved and or became reality, matching those debts or those revenue sources with various types of debt to make the projects at hand become reality. And one of the so that's what we're trying to demonstrate here is that all the different debt issues that are outstanding, where the revenues are coming from primarily to pay for the different debt issues. And the one of note is the Justice Center, which is underway, some work being done on that. We've already financed part of that in notes. And that's one of the important discussion topics for tonight, I think, because it's time to take those short-term notes to long-term financing. And what we have been discussing for well over a year now is using a unique, not terribly unique, but unique to the city financing technique in order to preserve the city's debt limitations. And these are considered certificates of participation, COPs we call them, not to be confused. But and what they are is rather than a traditional bond issue, COPs are investors come to the table and they participate in a lease document. So the property is actually held by a paper corporation that is just a pass-through for these lease payments, okay? And by making it a lease transaction, a lease financing, it does not impact the city's debt limitations. So these lease payments are not considered debt by Ohio statute, and therefore they don't get go against your debt limitations. And again, a year ago when we started, but more than a year ago when we started talking about this, we were keeping an eye on the bottom line, not only of the city's ability to borrow money, but the other projects that were down the road, things that were coming online. So we thought, boom, the Justice Center jumped out as an opportunity to utilize COPs. And the reason for that is investors, when they invest in something like this, they want it to be an essential purpose project, which means clearly a safety center is essential purpose, something that would always be needed at the city. And the reason that investors want it to be essential purpose is because it's a lease and not debt. This commission, each and every year, can appropriate for the debt service payments or not, okay? So if a project goes sour, if it's a COPS transaction, and whatever folks are in these seats in the future decide we don't want to fund that anymore, those investors take the risk of non-appropriation, okay? That's why they like essential purpose projects for COPs, because they have pretty good confidence and almost a spotless track record from coast to coast in this country of COPs for essential purposes never being non-appropriated. Okay, so that's why the other thing about the Justice Center is that it's on a specific piece of property. Okay, and the way COPS work is there's one thing to finance the project over the life that you want to finance at 30 years. But if there was a hiccup along the way, a non-appropriation or some difficulty among this body to reappropriate, there's a land lease under, on the land that the building sits on, and that land lease is actually 5 years longer than the building lease. Okay, and the reason for that is to give the investors 5 years to work out a solution if there's some kind of a problem down the road. So the nice thing about this Justice Center is it sits right there. There's no competing title work, for different, an outbuilding here, an outbuilding there. It's right there. So the City of Sandusky's Justice Center fits that definition to a T, which is, why we think it's a good solution here. And again, the ultimate goal is to keep an eye on the city's overall ability to borrow money, not only for projects that are on the table, but for any future projects. And we always take a look at emergencies, things we don't see coming down the pipe. Tornado rips through town, we have $1 million of cleanup to do. How are we going to pay for that? Do we have reserves in our debt capacity to do that? Just one example. So Sandusky's always done a great job with its basket of revenues, matching them with debt obligations. And the one big one going against the general fund is the Justice Center, but not from an affordability standpoint, but from a debt limitation standpoint. We've recommended the COPS structure. And getting to the limitations, there's two limitations that all Ohio subdivision municipalities have to abide by. One is called a direct debt limitation, which is basically the debt that's held by that political subdivisions without regard to any surrounding communities, overlapping entities. And so what we have here is this is how the state of Ohio requires Sandusky and all municipalities to calculate their direct debt limitations, and it's pretty simple. It's all based on assessed valuation, and if Commissioner Murray was here, he'd give us a history lesson on when these laws were enacted back in the 1910s, I think. But it's based on property, and so the limitation calculation is 5.5% of your assessed valuation is the maximum amount of debt you can borrow, issue, on an unvoted basis, where you don't go to taxpayers and ask them on the ballot to approve it. If you do include voted issues on that, the limitation then goes up to 10.5% of assessed valuation. So we're always focusing on the 5.5%. Other than the library, we've never had, in recent history, a voted debt issue for the city. So it's the 5.5% that we focus on. And as you work through this, you see the bottom line there. Right now, on an unvoted basis, a limited tax basis, we have a little over $23 million of capacity remaining after everything that exists and everything that is currently planned, including the landings, the Justice Center, Columbus Ave, and the Rec Center. So there's still $23 million of available debt capacity under the debt limit, under the direct debt limitation. This is the one that the city has full control over. I just went over this slide. It's all about the COPS. The other debt limitation that we need to be concerned with is called the indirect 10 mil debt limitation. And what the statute reads there is that no one taxpayer can be taxed for debt more than 10 mils by all the overlapping subdivisions, and they're all listed here. You got the county, you got the city, you got the schools, you got EOD, Parks District, all those overlapping, whatever debt they have outstanding counts towards this 10 mil limitation. So on the far right-hand column, you can see that the county takes up about 0.3 mils worth of debt, almost 0.4 mils worth of debt. The city is almost 3 mils. The remainder is just over 6 mills. But then, again, back to my point about emergencies, we recommend, certainly not statutory, but we recommend that you peel off an additional mill, which in Sandusky's case, with the assessed valuation of just over 500 million, it's on here somewhere, 548 million. 1 mill would be $548,000 of debt. Anyhow, you peel that off for emergencies, and that leaves you with 5.7. Now, this is not a what we call a par amount test or an actual debt issue limit. It's a debt service, meaning affordability. How much on any given year can we afford to put towards debt service? So you take that 5.7 mils, you extrapolate that versus the assessed valuation, and you actually come up with $3.1 million worth of debt service that you could leverage into a debt issue. And in this case, at 5% for 20 years would be almost $40 million. So this particular debt limit, the indirect debt limit, is actually more generous than the previous one, the direct debt. So what state law says is you got to go with the lower debt limit. Okay, so in Sandusky's case, it's the direct debt limit of about $23 million right now. And again, it's all based on assessed valuation. You know, this graph, historical graph of Sandusky's assessed valuation is very similar to so many Ohio communities where after 2008, we got wrecked. And now we're just slowly digging our way out. And finally, you know, we're beyond, you know, pre-recession totals in our assessed valuation. So this is since these debt limitations are based on assessed valuation, we have to pay close attention to this, and we do. And I just wanted to wrap up with a little bit of a picture of what interest rates look like now. We kind of tapped the brakes on this, quite frankly, last year. Commissioner Murray astutely said, boy, interest rates feel really high right now. Why don't we tap the brakes and give it some time? In general, this is a graph of long-term, if you will, long-term municipal rates, tax-exempt rates, the rates that we would get on our debt here. And you can see that, you know, back in the 80s when I bought my first investment property where I paid 16.5% variable interest rate on a mortgage, municipal rates were over 13%. Obviously, they've come down over time. And during COVID and kind of pre-COVID, actually, we hit all-time lows when, you know, the overnight Fed rate was at 0. All other interest rates acted accordingly, were very, very low. We had a little historical dip. Don't really expect that to return unless there's some other crisis. But for now, I think the point is that interest rates right now are right about where they should be and where they, even low for historical purposes. And then one last thing on interest rates. This graph, the bottom graph there, the light gray graph, shows you one from interest rates. Short-term interest rates are typically low because the investors aren't risking their investment for very long. And if they're risking it for 30 years, then they expect a better return for a longer-term investment. And that's what the bottom graph there shows, is basically low short-term interest rates and higher long-term interest rates. That's called a normal yield curve. That's what we like to see. Unfortunately, with the Fed having to keep a lid on inflation, they've jacked up that overnight rate, as you hear about on a daily basis, up over 5%. So short-term rates now are high, and then in about 5 years, they start to get lower again, and then they go back up to normal. So we're in this inverted, what they call an inverted yield curve right now. It's a temporary thing. When you start seeing, you know, the Federal Reserve start cutting rates, you'll know inherently that we're getting back to a normal yield curve. Fortunately, it's the short end that's high now. Fortunately, with any of the debt issues we do, any of the bond issues, any of the long-term financing, COPS or otherwise, we only have a couple of years to get paid off on the short end, and the longer term is fairly normal, as I demonstrated here. We're at pretty good long-term rates. So it's just the short-term rates, which affects our notes, unfortunately. You know, we've been paying pretty high rates on our notes lately for this reason, because the Fed's trying to get control of inflation. So that's what I had to present. I tried to be, 20,000 feet or less, and try to, give you the whole picture from our perspective. Be happy to answer any questions.
Comments or questions, Commissioners?
Mr. President, if I may.
Mr. Crable?
Couple of questions. On COPS, what are the terms of a lease that are possible under that program? 10-year, 20, 30?
The maximum by Ohio law is 30 years.
Okay.
And-
What would your recommendation be?
So far, we're working with 30 years. It's a long-term investment, and Lord knows, I think the plans are that Justice Center is going to be sitting there for a long time serving the community. 30 years, I think, it has to be less than the useful life of the facility. You can't borrow for longer than the useful life. And
Right.
anyhow, I don't really have a recommendation. It's whatever. It's an affordability question. The shorter you have the debt outstanding, the higher the annual payments are going to be, just like a house mortgage. So
Right.
don't really have a recommendation, but that's the model we've been working with.
When, I don't know who goes out and sells this to investors.
Right.
Okay. But when that occurs, are there certain classes or types of investors that you're looking for? Is it individuals? Is it retirement funds? Is it, large banks that are buying these? Can you give me some background?
That's a great question. And what we've always done here, most always at the city, is reach out to all types of investors. Because if we reach out to all types of investors, we're more likely to get the lowest available interest rate from any group of investors. And it will include everybody you just mentioned. Individuals, moms and pops, big mutual funds, large insurance companies, money managers, and they all kind of buy bonds at different parts of that 30-year life, okay? The individual investors usually kind of short. Money managers, trust funds or bank trust departments that kind of handle other people's money. They're kind of in the 10 to 15-year range. And then the insurance companies who need to lock it up because they have, claims that they have to pay, they're out there on the long end. And we depend on those bigger companies for some of the longer high, if you will. The $10 million Justice Center issue will pay off debt, pay off the principal a little bit at a time for the first 10 years, and the most of it's going to get paid out there in the long end. So I would guess that about $7 million of it's going to be 10 years or longer, and we need insurance companies to do that. So the city has always adopted, unless there's special circumstances, always adopted the competitive sale of its debt as the best way to get the lowest. And that's as simply phrased as just like buying a backhoe. You set out a set of specs and you say on Tuesday at 11 o'clock, give me your best price, which in this case is the lowest available interest rate. You win, okay? There's other ways to do it. You can invite an underwriter in, an investment banking firm in to work with you hand in hand through the process.
Well, and that was kind of my next question is, can you give us just a bit of a view of what this process looks like? Who handles it? Do we do it internally ourselves? How does that,
Sure.
what's that look like?
Yeah, our, so in simple terms, the city has debt that it wants to issue. Investors want to invest in that debt, and these underwriters are in the middle arranging that, right?
Okay.
Now, and it can be arranged on a negotiated basis, like I mentioned, where you pick an underwriter ahead of time and ask them to help find investors for you, or you could do it competitively where you don't care who the underwriter is, just give me the best interest rate. What we would typically say is on a plain vanilla general obligation debt issue, we would well, we don't, the Government Financial Officers Association recommends plain vanilla, general obligation, nothing strange about the debt, well-known name in the marketplace, which Sandusky is, good credit rating, which Sandusky has, competitive issue, no questions asked, okay? When it gets a little dicey, when there's something unique about it, and cops could potentially fall into that basket, might consider getting, selecting an underwriting firm to help with that. Cops are still fairly commonplace, even though they're unusual, they're not general obligation debt, they're still normal enough in the investing public that they can be very successfully sold at competitive sale. And since that's been the city's philosophy for the 30 years I've been around, I don't see any reason necessarily to change that method for this sale.
I have one other question, but it's not specific to cops. How are we in this building? In other words, are we on a lease? Or is there debt that is financing this?
I'll let our finance director answer that question.
Through Commission President to Commissioner Crable, yes, we are currently under a lease setup. This building was first occupied by the city in 2019, and then after 7 years, we have the option to purchase the building. So 2026 would be the first time we have the option to purchase the building. Until then, we're in a lease format.
And is there thinking in place at this point as to what we want to do, whether we want to continue it as a lease or to make, to move toward a purchase?
That would certainly be a decision by the people sitting in these chairs at that
Sure.
point in time. And I would think that would make sense, but I won't be one of those people sitting in this chair, obviously. But the lease was a 7-year lease, I believe, was it
Correct.
not? And that price on this building was fixed at that point in time.
Okay.
So we know today what that cost of buying this property is at that point in time.
Well,
Which I think puts the city in a great position.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously asking the question because I'm trying to, that's an obligation or, a decision point that we're going to reach at some point. And, how does that affect, might that be affected by what we decide to do here? So,
The dramatic amount of headroom that we have, I don't think that's going to be a problem bonding that or financing that purchase when it comes due, because we have a significant amount of borrowing power. Is that correct, Mr. Simpson?
And again, just from my perspective, that was not specifically this building, but the question of available debt capacity was forefront when we started to discuss this COPS issue last year. We're trying to protect the city's ability to borrow debt for future obligations, whatever they might be. And because the Justice Center fit the envelope so well, that's why we started down that path.
Sure.
okay.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pachali?
Mr. Cecina, I saw your presentation at the Finance Committee. You do an excellent job. Did an excellent job tonight. Relative to this COPS program, is that, I did a little bit of research, and is that used by many municipalities? I thought I saw where it was used mainly by school systems.
School systems use them a lot because school debt limitations are much more constrained than cities and counties. Generally, they have to ask voters for everything they want to borrow. And one way, because COPS are not debt, schools that can afford it do use COPS. But no, a lot of cities use it too for very similar reasons we talked about. Even as big as the city of Columbus. City of Columbus just did a big COPS issue. It just fit into their portfolio the way they wanted it to. And it's not unusual for cities to do that at all.
And do you think it's cheaper to go that route than to issue bonds?
It's slightly more expensive on the interest rate component. What we've been seeing is about 5 basis points, which is 0.05%. So instead of 4.5%, it would be 4.55% to, again, protect the debt limitation, the debt capacity. Other costs, bond issue, attorney costs, our fee, underwriter fee, everything else is the same for COPS as it is for general obligation debt. The only difference is, and it's because, again, investors view COPS as slightly more risky than general obligation debt, just like they would a water revenue issue coming out of the city, because a water revenue issue coming out of the city only depends on water revenues to pay the debt. So investors see that as being more risky. So there's different, investors are savvy. And they look at all angles and they figure if we can squeeze an extra couple basis points out because of a principled basis, they will.
I guess what I struggle with a little bit is, in my mind, and I'm not a financial guy, but if you're paying something off, it's still debt. It just doesn't show up as debt, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the affordability issue.
And then did I see on that one spreadsheet where the actual cost of under COPS, under this, that spreadsheet that was, shows it as it goes out is like $18 million for the Justice Center?
Total principal and interest, it would be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. We have just, with these higher interest rates, we've just crossed over to where whatever you're borrowing is getting close to the same amount in interest as it was. For years, for the last 10 years, you could borrow $10 million and expect to pay $8 million or less in interest over time. We're starting to get closer to $10 million for $10 million, if you will. But yeah, principal and interest, right?
And one other thing, in the banking industry, they have like a loan-to-value ratio. Is there something similar to that with, say, the $3 million in debt? Is there the $3 million in debt service we can still afford? Is there like a loan-to-value where you would say, well, you don't want to get up any higher than a certain percentage?
Yeah, and for better or worse, our rating agency, Moody's, keeps track of that. Not that we don't, but they do. And I don't have it at my fingertips, but I do know that from Moody's perspective, City of Sandusky's debt, even if everything else comes on board, is below national medians, and that's acceptable to them to maintain the city's credit rating.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioners? I too sat through your presentation before, Mr. Cecina. It was excellent then, it's excellent now. The good thing is the numbers haven't changed in the last couple of months. So, and I think you made it very clear for those few people that had the misconception that the COPS idea was a way of ducking or hiding some bad position that we are in financially. That is a misconception. We're in a terrific position financially. The city's never had better finances than we have right now. And our
That's my 7 o'clock meeting, sorry.
we'll get you to that. And that is a direct result, I think, of a lot of things, mostly having a good finance department. And I have a certain amount of comfort level having you on the case for the last 25 or 30 years also. It's good to have continuity.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. It makes my job worth doing.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You can get to your 7 o'clock meeting.
All right. Appreciate it, everyone.
care.
Thank you.
Any residents with comments regarding tonight's agenda, please step to the podium and share with us your name and address and your agenda comments.
Mr. Chairman, Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way, Sandusky. On item number 2, it looks like we're combining a couple of projects together. One is the paving of Pierce Street and also the Farwell Park basketball courts. 2 questions on that. The first one is, in the supporting documents, it indicates that we're putting a thin layer of asphalt on Pierce Street. If someone could please identify what a thin coat of asphalt stands for. I know years ago we used to do 3 inches. We dropped it down to 1.5 inches here on each street here, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, because other cities were doing it. So I was just curious if we're sticking with the 1.5 inches or if we decided to go with less. The other question on that same issue is the basketball courts. Is there a reason why we are not able to do that in-house? I know we have some equipment that is asphalt friendly, so why are we not doing that in-house instead of farming that out? Item number 3, it looks like we're combining, again, 3 different projects that are not directly directly related, and I'm questioning whether or not the charter allows us, the Sandusky's charter allows us to combine projects that are not directly related. Say that 10 times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schwanger. Additional comments on agenda items? If not, we will move to communications from staff. We've received several communications from staff. Can I have a motion to accept those communications?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion is approved, and hearing no objection, that motion is approved. Commissioners, surprisingly enough, we have no items on the consent agenda this evening. I do not remember that happening in the past. Mr. Myers, we present item number 1 on the regular agenda.
Yes, Mr. President, it is requested a resolution be passed adopting the consent legislation submitted by the Director of the Ohio Department of Transportation for ERI US 6 Connectivity Corridor Project, PID number 116570, authorizing and directing the city manager to sign the consent legislation and to execute any necessary contracts with the Director of Transportation for this project. This is the second reading.
As this is the second reading, we do not need a motion. We'll just begin with discussion. Discussion, commissioners, on that ordinance, on that resolution. If not, Ms. Myers, do you call a roll on that resolution?
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Aye.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes,
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
that resolution is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 2, please.
It is requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed 2024 Community Development Block Grant Street Rehabilitation and Farwell Park Basketball Courts Surfacing Project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Coons.
move for the adoption of the resolution under suspension of the rules as contained and in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Klein, I wonder if you'd share with us the strategy, and I think I know what it is, but if you'll share for the record the strategy of combining those projects. And you may speak also perhaps to the thin layer of blacktop.
Yes, Commission President, the combining of those two projects, they're both being paid for out of the CDBG fund. So the basketball courts and the resurfacing, there was a little bit of carryover from resurfacing last year that was not used, so we kept it into the project cost. That was about $90,000, I believe, was carried over from last year, and then there's $24,000 that was set aside for the basketball courts. Yes, our staff does a good job of milling and resurfacing, but to resurface a basketball court is a little bit more precise to make sure the ball bounces exactly as it needs to. Our equipment is older. We prefer to make sure that we have a firm or a company involved, a contractor involved that paves pretty much every single day to make sure that those surfaces are exactly what they need to be. Plus the striping is different. The surface is slightly different. They put a coating on top of it as well. So the basketball court is really a particularly precise piece of paving that we just aren't comfortable doing in-house. And the last thing we need to do is do that and come back and mill out a section of it and try to redo it again and come back and redo it again so that the basketball's bouncing. But as far as Pierce Street, something that we found very effective recently is when we do these concrete overlay streets is milling them slightly and then putting down what amounts to a chip and seal. We don't like to use chip and seal on the surface, but what that chip and seal is doing is it's filling in all the voids in that concrete, and it's providing a nice base so that the reflective cracking doesn't come up in the future. So then we do put that asphalt overlay on top of it like we do every other street. And in regards to the 3 inches versus the 1.5, it used to be that we do 3 inches, but we found that the 1.5 is just as effective. We certainly aren't doing things just because other communities are doing them. We We'll make sure that we're implementing things that we think are sound engineering practice. We do look at other communities to see if there are things that are happening, but we don't implement them simply because they are doing them as well. So in these 1.5 inches, ODOT's doing them on some of the larger, more heavily trafficked routes in the city, and they've been holding up. It's been holding up in other cities, and so far they've held up really well here, especially on the local roads.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Additional
President.
comments or questions, Commissioner?
Mr. President, if I could just add a comment real quick about the basketball courts at Farwell. I drive down there quite regularly, and we have 1970 or 1980 basketball hoops that I have played in, likely back in my day when I was a basketball player. But we directed staff last year to order basketball hoops, the nice ones with the poles and all that. So we're replacing that as part of the project too. We want to make sure that those got taken care of and that that park is able to play basketball in a nice manner. So just wanted the commission aware that we're adding those on as part of the project.
And the good news is this is going to happen sooner rather than later, yet this summer,
We
fall.
bid the project, and the hope is, yes, that the contractor gets on it immediately as soon as we're allowed to award. We cannot award because it is CDBG federal funds. We cannot award until after July. Or until after July 1st. But hopefully we get a contractor whose schedule is not jam-packed through the remainder of the year and they don't use us as filler work, and then we can get somebody that can come in, do the work relatively quickly and smoothly and be on our way.
Good. It's important to those kids in that neighborhood.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pajali.
Mr. Klein, isn't OPWC, Ohio Public Works, acceptable? They have two categories where the one is more of a mill and fill, where inch and a half, they'll fund those projects, and then reconstruction projects, they go to what, 3 inches?
Yes, through the commission president, there are definitely different standards for what's considered reconstruction versus resurfacing.
Yeah.
And those are things that we certainly look into as we're going through the different funding sources. If a street needs reconstruction, say it might need new curb ramps and new curbs throughout the whole thing, and we know that there's going to be a lot of base repair and things like that, we will pay to reconstruct the entire thing, which is what we did on Camp Street north of Monroe a couple years ago. That was a reconstruct. So there are applications where we make sure we do that, and there are applications where it's just a resurfacing that's required. And so,
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that the Ohio Public Works program, and they fund thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of improvements. It's an acceptable practice for them, inch and a half.
Thank you, Mr. Pajali.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Coons.
I just want to take a minute just to thank Mr. Klein, Mr. Whirling, and Mr. Orzek for keeping me informed in the work that you've done on that. I know that I went over there and took a look at the ports, and they were really in bad shape, so I was really happy to hear that they would be repaved. It's special to me because I played basketball over there when I was a child and played one-on-one, even when it was dark outside, and I'm still shooting. So I just wanted to say thank you.
How did the ball bounce for you?
Oh, it was good then, right? If you try to bounce the ball over there now, it's going everywhere.
That's our point. Ms. Myers, you call the roll on the motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
That resolution is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 3, please.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a professional design service agreement with OHM Advisors of Cleveland, Ohio for the West Monroe Street Rehabilitation Project, Camp Street to Decatur Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Varga.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Hastings, the question of the legality of combining three projects, I will let you speak to if you would.
Well, at this meeting, Mr. President, this is not the three projects, this is professional design services, which is one subject.
One contract.
Yes,
And why anyone would think we would do anything illegal is beyond me.
right.
Additional comments or questions, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, you call the roll on that ordinance, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
That ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 4, please.
It is requested a resolution be passed declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed 2024 Parks Concrete Project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of costs thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this resolution, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this resolution under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, you call the roll on that resolution, on that motion, please.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
And now on the resolution.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes,
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
that resolution is passed. Ms. Myers, you present item number 5.
It is requested an ordinance be passed declaring 4 Toro irrigation system field satellites as unnecessary and unfit for city use pursuant to Section 25 of the city charter, authorizing and directing the city manager to purchase 4 new Toro field satellites from Jerry Pate Turf and Irrigation Century Equipment of Twinsburg, Ohio, for the Mills Creek Golf Course, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Pajali.
I would move to adopt this ordinance under Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Waddington.
this is long, long overdue. I see Mr. Whirling out there. We went several months or last 4 or 5, maybe 6 years where a sprinkler would pop up and you'd get a shower and then you wouldn't see water for 2 weeks and it was rock hard out there. So I'm glad they're finally fixing this. That goes back, about 20 years, 25 years we had that done? And I believe it was a farmer that actually did the initial, correct? I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was.
Mr. Waddington, I have to believe that without watering and the pavement being hard would improve the length of the distance of your drive.
As long as I don't hit any trees.
Then they go backwards. Mr. Whirling, I did notice that this must be a proprietary piece of equipment because it is only available from this particular Toro dealer. It's isn't something we can find on the internet and buy ourselves, apparently.
It's not on Amazon.
On Amazon, yeah.
To the commission president, you are correct. It's a Toro system, the irrigation system, and it's proprietary as far as the satellites are concerned.
Okay, it is what it is. I know oftentimes we all find ourselves in that position that we're locked into one company and we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So hopefully we'll get it bought and get the grass watered for Commissioner Waddington's better playing.
Especially for July, yeah.
Especially for July and August. Additional comments, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, you call a roll on that ordinance, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes,
Mr. Bajali?
Yes.
that ordinance is passed. Ms. Myers, you present the last item, item number 6.
It is requested an ordinance be passed authorizing and directing the city manager to place an order for the purchase of 3 2025 Ford Utility Police SUVs from Statewide Ford of Van Wert, Ohio, for the police department, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this ordinance, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Coons?
move for the adoption of the ordinance under suspension of the rules as contained in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Chief Oliver, any delivery date on this?
Hopefully early March of 2025. The 2024s are gone. There are none available throughout the nation. Statewide's pretty confident that they'll be releasing the 25s at the end of this year, and they should be ready and delivered to us completely outfitted, hopefully in March of 25.
Better than the last ones we ordered, isn't it?
It's a lot better. From those 6 cruisers that we were ultimately able to get after 3 years, we have 3 of them on the road now. The 4th is just about complete with the equipment, and then the other 2 will be coming out. So we're in a better spot than we were.
Do I understand that this company is doing the outfitting and as opposed to we used to outfit them ourselves? Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They'll come fully outfitted.
Yeah,
They'll be
so
delivered to us, ready to go.
Put the key in and go.
Right to patrol.
Good, okay. Additional comments or questions, Commissioners? Ms. Myers, you call a roll on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Vargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance.
Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Vargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes,
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
that ordinance is passed. That concludes our regular agenda. We'll turn to our city manager for his report.
Good evening, Commissioners, audience, and staff. I have a donation for the Police Department, $15 for the K-9 Fund from Courtney Yancey. If I can get a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved with our thanks.
I have 3 donations for REC. Humana for their $520 donation will be used for a Juneteenth 360 booth and summer break camp supplies. Baybell Restaurant and the Hographies for donating dinnerware to be used at Mills at Rec. The estimated cost of the donation is $500. And Carmen Shalette Thompson for her donation of 30 books for the reading writing room at Mills. If I can get a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second discussion. Without objection, that motion will be approved. Hearing no objection, that motion is approved to all 3 of those individuals.
Sandusky Police Department was recognized as gold standards for the Lexipol policy for 2023. It was for excellence in law enforcement policy management. This is the 3rd consecutive year they have been awarded this distinction. Public Works, special thanks to local Boy Scout Troop 8 for volunteering to place flags at veterans' grave sites at Oakland Cemetery prior to the Memorial Day ceremony. A reminder to all residents and property owners to please complete the water service line inventory on our website at www.cityofsandusky.com/waterlines. From Community Development, the City of Sandusky will receive a $3,590,000 grant from the State of Ohio Welcome Home Ohio program. The city partnered with Neighbor Works Toledo Region and community building partners to develop the plan and grant application earlier this year, and is now working with our partners to finalize the details of the development. In the grant application, the city proposed using the grant to develop 14 new single-family modular homes and assist Habitat for Humanity in constructing 3 homes on Sandusky's south side. Ohio-based Unibuilt Custom Homes will produce the modular homes using Erie County trades with a preference for Sandusky-based businesses to complete the construction. Neighbor Works will also provide financial literacy programming for future home buyers. Sandusky is one of 17 recipients selected to share nearly $29.5 million in funding aimed at improving access to housing for income-eligible Ohioans. This funding is part of the first round of the WHO program, which will invest a total of $100 million in grants over 2 years to help land banks purchase, rehabilitate, or build qualifying residential properties. And for REC, the summer program registration is now available. Visit www.cityofsandusky.com/recreation to register for golf, camp, tennis, camp, gymnastics, and Safety Town. That concludes my report. Mr. Crable thought I'd be longer than the meeting, but I wasn't.
Comments or questions for the city manager?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Pargo.
City Manager Orzak, first of all, thank you for that great news about the grant, but I really want to not give all the sunshine on you. I want to look at Colleen and tell her congratulations to you and all of the staff who worked really hard and quickly to get that money. We talk every day to residents who have people in their family who are looking for homes, trying to find homes, affordable homes, new homes, and so this is really exciting for our area, so thank you.
Additional comments?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Coons?
I did hear about 14 homes, and I heard modular for that south side area. Can you talk just a little bit about what the average cost of those homes would be and what that might look like, or what the goal was over there?
Sure, through the Commission President. These are not cited in the South Side area. The Habitat for Humanity homes that we're assisting their company in building will be on the South Side.
I got you.
The others are scattered land bank lots near and around the Osborne School project.
Okay.
In terms of the modular homes, we anticipate selling these homes at about $150,000 to qualifying buyers that are at or below 80% of area median income. That is a requirement of the grant.
Okay, thank you.
I'm very excited to bring forward project details as they become available.
I too want to thank Ms. Gilson and her department for the work that they literally pivoted on a dime to make this work. And they had a lot of interaction with the state, to get this across the finish line. Sometimes when you start these processes, you don't know if you're going down a dead end or not, but this certainly was not a dead end for us, $3.5 million. We will end up being the model for this program.
Yeah.
That's what the state wants. That's what we want. And to share with you, or perhaps remind you if you're not aware of it, this $3.5 million is meant to perpetuate itself. We will sell those homes for the $150,000, and then we will reinvest those dollars in more homes. So we think we're getting 14, 15, 16 homes. You're really going to get 25 or 30 homes out of this. Significant difference in our community. And I think, we are really, Ms. Gilson and her staff are really on the leading edge of finding affordable housing, for this community, which I think we all realize what a need there is out there for that. Additional comments for city manager? Letting him off the hook easy. Items of old business. Any items of old business, commissioners? Items of new business. I have a housekeeping item here under new business. I will request a motion for a public hearing set for the July the 8th meeting for our 2025 tax budget. That is a typical public hearing that we have every year.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and a second discussion. Ms. Myers, you call roll on that motion, please.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. Coons?
Yes.
Mr. Crable?
Yes.
Ms. Vargo?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Mr. Pajali?
Yes.
That public hearing is set for July the 8th. Additional items of new business, commissioners. If not, we'll go to the public comments on any item that pertains to city business. Any public would like to speak on items pertaining to city business?
Tim Schwanger, 362 Sheffield Way. The topic for me tonight is the West End State Route 6 repaving, Venice Road. With the milling and repaving of that through the state, the small white delineators that separates Route 6 from the pathway have been taken down. And I'm wondering, since I live out in the west end of town and I know some of the people that live on that curve out there, if we can go to a better system, replacing those delineators with something a little bit better that would reflect at night and stuff like that. The people that live on the curve, I talked to them last week and they said that they've had one mailbox that's been knocked down 4 times. Another mailbox, different mailbox, has been knocked down once. And they indicated that the first mailbox that gets knocked down, the city pays for that. Any mailboxes after that, it's on the property owner to replace that mailbox. Those delineators that were out there, I'm telling you, it looks like a third world country put those up. Let's get something a little bit more sturdy, something that reflects at night to add to the safety. What they like to have out there actually is some kind of a boulevard separating, and they stated to me that they were promised a boulevard when that project happened, but then when I talked to the engineering department, they indicated that that was never discussed. I'm not calling anybody a liar. I'm just saying that something better needs to happen out before somebody gets killed. We talk about safe routes to schools all the time. That's very, very, very unsafe, and it's not a matter if, it's a matter of when. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwanger. Additional public comments on any item that pertains to city business? If you'll step to the podium and share with us your name so we have a way to respond to you, we would appreciate it.
My name is Kim Backney. I'm here representing Waltz Auto Repair, 1229 West Perkins Ave. I have a request and a question regarding towing practices for Sandusky Police Department. The request is, if it's at all possible, to get an inventory on all police tows that we tow. For instance, we had a tow on May 22nd. A gentleman was involved in an accident and was charged with driving under suspension. There was no inventory. He started calling the next day to retrieve the vehicle. We did not have an inventory for this, but we did look up the GLIP report, and he was not the owner. An inventory would help us tremendously because it lists the owner, it lists the driver. And we're having to look up and do our own research to make sure we're releasing these vehicles to the proper person, which is the registered owner. I know the State Patrol does an inventory for every tow. It's something we thought we would just come here and ask if that's a possibility. We only get them at this point for driving under suspensions and OVIs. This was a driving under suspension accident. Because it was an accident, we were not given an inventory. That's my request. My question is, the towing for OBIs, driving under suspensions that are parked, but yet we are called out for multiple parking complaints that are cars that are parked for a month with flat tires. I have two instances I would like to bring up. The first one was in March of this year. It was a 2021 Jeep. The owner was from Kentucky. He was charged with an OBI, had 4 prior OBIs, and the vehicle was left legally parked. We saw the vehicle the next day at Berardi's. I have more than that, but another one that concerns me it was last year in April, but the owner was charged with an OBI, failure to control, OBI suspension, and possession of cocaine. There was a 2-hour time frame from when the stop was implemented to the officer was discharged because they waited for his brother to come so the vehicle would not be towed. My last one I would like to bring up was also last year. It was a local, but it was an OBI. The gentleman had a loaded Taurus semi-automatic gun, a loaded Taurus .38 caliber revolver. He had .38 caliber rounds, 9mm rounds, 9mm magazines, marijuana, and a valid driver responded. They waited for that. And my question is, I know Perkins Police tows all OBIs. They tow all under suspensions. And we're just wondering the protocol as to why some of these are parked with very serious charges and others are towed. Thank you.
Thanks. I will assure you that we will get a response to both your issue and your questions from Chief Oliver.
All right, thank you for your time.
We know who you are.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. And I mean that in a good way. Additional public comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned.